Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy for Sales podcast. Tim Hooper, your host here, where we believe if you're not having fun in sales, you may be doing something wrong. And we're excited today to have a wonderful friend of mine on the podcast, and also somebody who I met about a year and a half ago, and we met mutually at one of our clients' events, and just happen to both be bringing something of value to that event, where speaking and training. So Brad is one of these guys you want to know around. Brad Martin is the owner and leader of the amazing team at Superlative Signings, which is a national signing service and a tremendous value-adding partner to our agency base, and just a great influence in the real estate industry. So Brad, welcome to the podcast.
Tim, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Man, when we first talked about doing a podcast, one thing you said to me, and I think our sales approach is so alike, but one thing you said to me was applying that 80-20 principle into your business. And, you know, when I talk to sales teams, I'm always talking about metrics of measurement. What gets measured gets done, and also knowing the data, because data, in my opinion, is greater than drama. And sales can be very dramatic, but the data supersedes. So how do you apply the 80-20 principle? What does that mean to you? How do you apply it in your business?
Great. Yeah. So 100% for us, those metrics are so important. We call them inputs. So what we do is focus every week on a certain number of inputs so that we can spend that 80% of our time doing the things that move our business the most, being productive, truly productive, versus just being busy, which a lot of business owners get bogged down on those things, accounting and payroll and all these things that are that 20% that are not moving the needle at all for the top line. So trying to spend most of your time focusing on inputs is so important to us.
Wow. When it comes to 80-20 with your time, I mean, do you see that translate as you meet with your clients and prospects? Does that mindset help you value them and their time, and also kind of sniff test the ones who will be a good fit for you? Just how does operating that mindset affect that?
Sure. So my 80% is obviously prospecting in many different forms, social media, but hands down in person is it. Just like we're doing right here, because you can reach the most people, you can make the most impact when they can see exactly who they could potentially be doing business with.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's got to be a good fit. So not every client is a fit for us, and that's fine. I don't need every client. I just need the ones that are just like us, that are going to buy well, where we're always focused on the client. And I can tell that right away. And also, ideally, they're interested in growing their business. They understand the importance of ROT, return on their time, because they know that the more time they can save from things that aren't important, that 20%, they're going to get a tremendous bang for their buck. So those are people who are looking for growing their business, and they really value the client experience. And you can figure that out in less than 5 minutes from talking to people, typically based on the questions they're firing at me. If their first question is, what are your fees? They're probably not a good fit for us, versus asking about the value we bring, how we take care of their clients at the table. I can see really where their focus is.
That's strong. I like that you said the questions they ask you, and you're listening. I was just talking to a listening coach. She's my coach, and I decided, I was going to get more intentional on listening. And it's interesting, like we can actually pick up on some of those cues if we'll just listen for them and be intentional with our listening. So I like that you said that, because wow. And that's what, 80-20 principle is going in. What I like to tell sales teams is go in to disqualify more than you're going in to try to win the business or qualify somebody. Go in and try to disqualify them. Like go in with the intention of disqualifying them. I mean, if you think with that approach, you'll actually listen to those cues that might indicate this isn't a good fit. I love that you said that. So that kind of tees us up for the next piece I wanted to jump into. Was you hear those questions that are the right questions. This is a potential good client. I mean, I love that you said the ROT. You can see that the return on time, the return on their investment is there. Like, when you start feeling that synergy and that fit, like how do you zoom in to challenge them when you, as a supplier to and partner in, and I like the word supplier, but I like the word partner better, a partner in their business process and their business success. How do you challenge them? Or how do you create the courage and boldness with you and your sales staff to challenge them in gaps that you see in their business or opportunity costs in their business?
Sure. So the biggest one I always see is I will find sometimes smaller clients will still manually try to find notaries for their closings that are out of state, where they don't have a local in-house person that they trust. And that is such a huge time suck because they will call 10 people to get 2 responses or text 10 people as well. And they're wasting, and even when they get responses, then the 1 or 2 people that have replied, there's no guarantee that they are the best person for that closing. So it's basically kind of rolling the dice. So that's where we typically will challenge them and say, let us save you that time because it's so important. We save them time many different places, but at the beginning, finding a really qualified closer, that's it, number one, because our network is so large and we've worked with closers over and over again over the years that we trust in many areas across the country. So that's the biggest challenge. I just out of the gate, when I asked them, how are you finding notaries for those closing out of state, California, Texas, wherever? And when they say they're manually calling them, I'm like, well, let me save you time. And usually the response I get is, where have you been all my life? That sounds amazing. And so that's really where we challenge them. And then obviously my clients sometimes will give challenge on social media because they'll see me posting, interacting with their pages, and they'll get a little inspired and like, okay, well, how can I get better at this? Because it's clearly getting traction for you. And that's the other place where we can assist. And that's where we can add value, tremendous value, because I'm not an expert, but I know enough to be dangerous and at least can share to help them grow their social.
It's interesting as you share the core of your business and challenging it in that, but then also social media, that's not the core of your business. That's more of a strategy, but you're doing it well. And so here's something unrelated to the core of your business, right? Signings, closings, on time, delighting that end customer, elevating them in the process. Like all of that's your core, but here's something that's not your core. And yet you're saying that that's interesting and intriguing and also an area you're able to go fill a gap or a void for your partners. That's huge. Like, I think a lot of times we get stuck in the rut of this is all we do. And we're going to talk so much about this thing that we don't realize that sometimes the how we do it, the how we're going about our marketing, the how we're going about our sales, the how we're going about customer service, the how we're going about team building, recruitment, culture, the how, the playbook is also something that we can become a channel partner with the clients and the prospective clients that we're looking to do business with. So I love that you say that. How do you start that conversation though? Say they don't bring social media up, but you've noticed their social skills suck. How do you bring the conversation up to get them interested in perhaps leveraging some of the value add that you bring?
Great. So on the prospecting side, this is not something I'll bring up in the very first meeting because I haven't established enough trust yet. They don't know me well enough yet. This is more along I've been following up with them for a month or two. And then part of my CRM strategy is every week adding some kind of value wherever I can to prospective clients. And if you give enough free value, at some point, the trust will be established and they'll come on board. As well as our existing clients, we touch base every week as well using a CRM, and we let them know that we're always there to help them and add value. And that's one of the easiest ways I can add value because so many of our clients, unfortunately, don't utilize social strategy well, quite honestly. And they could really separate themselves again with that 80-20 rule. They could capture a huge part of the market if just more people knew about them as a company and also individually.
Right. That's key. And I like that you brought up CRM. I don't want to take a rabbit trail here, but I do want to touch on that for a second. Say you leave your first meeting, I like the word visit. You visit with your prospective client. It's a great visit. You ask all the right questions. You really zoom in and get to know them. You've listened. They seem like the right fit, the right DNA. You're like, okay, what do you do when you go back? You're sitting in your car, you're pulling up the CRM. How do you formalize that follow-up plan?
Sure, good question. So I had the same strategy process, I should say, each time. So once I come out of that visit with clients, whether it went amazing or kind of good, somewhere in between, number one, I'll make sure that every contact I have is added immediately to the CRM, and the notes that are fresh in my brain, I'm going to put in there to be stored later so I can reference them when I'm following up with them each week. And then number one, that's number one. And number two, I'm also going to go to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram and see if they have a page at all. And if they do, obviously follow them, interact with some of their more recent posts, genuinely, authentically. And that way I can kind of allow them to find out more about me without having to physically walk back in before I follow up. So they can do, if they're interested, they can check me out as well. And that's the start of that follow-up process.
Gotcha. I love that. I love that. I think that oftentimes, again, something I hear as I coach sales teams is had a great visit, great first meeting, and I just don't know how to follow up. Like,
Right.
how do I follow up, right? And so I'm always recommending and encouraging folks to really take a deep dive and hard look into the questions they're asking in that visit, because if our questions will be what I call more powerful and more open-ended, we will identify things just in listening that then we can go formalize a plan of approach for the next. Oftentimes I'll leave a visit and the next 4 steps are pretty clear to me. But it brings me to the next part of the question is, how do you, say you're in that visit and you have this great conversation and they have some things that they say, wow, Brad, that's interesting to me. Or, yeah, you could certainly, I think, help us in this area, this gap that you've helped me identify. How do you get their agreement before leaving that visit? In this, just how do you formalize that with them to get them to agree before you leave that visit that this is what we're going to do together going forward? Like, what does that look like for you? And how important is that agreement in your follow-up exercise?
Got it. Another good question. So this part's more challenging because when I started marketing, I had no idea what you're talking about. Now, a bit farther in with more experience under my belt, I understand that getting buy-in is so important. Getting buy-in from your prospective clients is, finding that pain point, number one, in the initial conversation is so tough to do. But once you figure that out, then you want to just confirm that, okay, great. If I could provide amazing closers that do complete full scans on every closing, and they're making FedEx drop, so it's in your office the next morning, and it's an amazing experience for your clients, is there any reason you wouldn't use us? And the answer is no. So they have confirmed based on the conversation we've had. And that conversation, whatever those pain points are, it's the same question. It's, well, if I do this, this, and this, is there any reason you wouldn't work with us? And, hopefully the answer is no. And if the answer is yes, you have to dig a little bit more. But that helps them cement it in their mind. They've said it, not me. And I also know, hopefully, if I've done my questions right, I know exactly, like you said, steps 2, 3, and 4 when I'm following up, what to focus on, which is the important pain points that matter the most to them, and how I could be a solution for that.
You articulated that so well. The if-then approach.
Right.
So if this, that, and the other takes place, then do you see us working? Or I like how you phrased it. What would anything be standing in the way of you working, or would anything stop you from working? I mean, you can ask that question a lot of different ways, but I like that you said, so this, that, and the other, you said are important. If we can do those things, could we do business together? Would you? And so the way you asked it was, would anything stop you? They say no. Okay. And that's great. So how do you move that to the next step? Like, how do you then say, okay, so, test us out on 3 deals, or, who do I need to talk to internally to make this connection happen? Or like, how do you take that into a nice, easy tee up for your follow-up?
Perfect. Yeah. So right at the end of that part of the conversation, the next question is, that's awesome. Looking forward to serving your team. Besides yourself, and I already have their business card at this point, who else on your team is going to need access to our platform to place orders, review documents post-closing. Let me get their cards or their emails as well. And that way I can invite you to our platform today. And that way everyone has access. And should you have any questions, you can fire those at us. But I'm also going to send you our client list as references as well. And we also encourage you to reach out if there's anyone in that network of clients that we have that you know from a past experience or just as peer relationships. We strongly encourage you to reach out and ask them how we're doing. We're very open and transparent about that because we know that we take great care of our clients and that the reviews are positive. I tell people all the time, Google our company, you won't find anything negative, period. Google other companies, I can't speak for them. But in our case, we pay our people, we take care of our clients. So that kind of speaks for itself.
That's huge. I love I love your proactivity though with that review, because a lot of times companies have good reviews or they have great client relationships and they're not taking advantage of or proactively offering that up in a transparent way. So I love that. I love that approach. And I've seen you do that effectively. So I'm glad you brought that up. This is great, Brad. And I thank you for breaking down these steps. Because I think, again, it's the science of the power question, the visit and the agreement of moving things forward. Somebody once told me 4 most powerful words: ask for the business. And if you don't do that, you don't know where you stand. And even if they say, yes, there's something stopping us, you dig deeper and still you get to a point where it's a technology integration thing, or it's they've been with this other place for so long, they're so loyal, and you're up against a hard no, then there's usually something you can still say, okay, this is going to be a long game, and this is the value. So let's go into, okay, the person said they're so loyal over here, there's some technology over here. So there's something kind of more macro standing in the way. How do you persevere with them in a valuable way? I call it VP, valuable perseverance, because some salespeople, they're the most perseverant, but it's just boring email after boring email after boring email. They persevere, but it's just perseverance. How do you differentiate with valuable perseverance when it is somebody, the right DNA, the right fit, you want to do business, but it's just it's not yet? How do you valuably persevere?
So there's a few different ways you can attack this. So one would be getting, a reference from someone that they currently work with that you know. So one of our clients used to work at this company or knows people that work there. So part of it is proactively reaching out to your existing clients and saying, hey, just for fun, does anyone know XYZ title company or used to work there? And I do that when asking for references. If I'm targeting a specific company or companies, I'll reach out and ask. And usually I'll find someone and I'll one-off with them and say, hey, is it possible to, or who should I be contacting? Or is there a better decision maker I should talk to? And the other part of the BP is when you're following up, like you said, the emails, like if they're not adding value, they're not going to read them, right? So they'll give you a few opportunities, but if it's consistently the same me message, they're going to tune out or block you. So it is always about how can I add value to this prospective client while simultaneously letting them know that I'm here for the long term and the long haul. And I'm always going to be generous with my time and my expertise and shares whatever I can. And if I'm giving you that without an exchange, then you know that if we ever get to that point where we're in a relationship, I'm going to bring even more value to your team. That's why some people provide free content on YouTube, because if you give all that value for free, imagine if you did business with them, how much more value you could gain from them. So that's kind of how I typically approach it.
I love that. I call it the go-giver mentality. And I'm sure, Brad, you've read the book, The Go-Giver. In fact, it's a recommended read. If you're in sales, read The Go-Giver. And it is this law of reciprocity, and it's a irrefutable. It is so ingrained in the DNA of this universe. You go anywhere, any country, the law of reciprocity is in every culture. It supersedes every language, or it translates into any language, and it supersedes all other powers. The law of reciprocity, but you cannot use this law in a in it for me way. You have to be, and I love that you said earlier in this, authentic. It has to be coming from a place of, I so want to better you as a person. Now, I have met with some people I do not want to do business with. I think they roll over people. They're not the right culture. Their team is it's a revolving door. They're just not a good DNA for me. I will not. I don't seek to provide value. I don't want to. Right. It is the people that I say they are a fit. It's the 80-20 principle. They are the right DNA. And therefore, I want to start moving into a position to be a value-adding partner. And I've listened well enough to then back up and map out a plan for adding value to them, even at a distance. And in that, and Brad, that's what's so beautiful. It's this go-giver mentality that you're the right person. You're my people. You're my people. Would it be okay if? Now, back to the agreement piece. Do you get their agreement into, hey, listen, I understand it's a no for now, but I've got this thing I do. I've got this mastermind I host. I got this. Do you back up and get their agreement for, or hey, would it be okay to touch base with you from, like, what does that agreement look like when it's a no?
Got it. So thankfully, I don't run into this too much. It's been a while since I've heard the word no, full disclosure. And that's because people are so nice. And most of the people I'm talking to are just so nice. But when I can clearly see there's a barrier, a macro barrier, as you said, so I typically will let them know that we're going to be in touch. I appreciate you taking the time out of your business today to chat. And I would love to continue to touch base with you to see if there's ever a possibility of a need. And the other part of that is I've had clients that are licensed in multiple states. And sometimes I'll offer, great, you're loyal to this one signing service you've been dealing with for 5 years. I don't blame you. I would want you to have my back too if we were working together. Is there a smaller part of your business where we could add potential value? So in some cases, yes, they're starting to grow their business in Northern Florida, their Maryland title company, for example. They don't have a tremendous presence yet, not a lot of boots on the ground. So when those closings occur, let us demonstrate value on those one or two offs whenever they come, just to prove that we are great at what we do. And let us be a second signing service backup, just in case your primary can't find someone. So, and it's the same thing. Most agents are going to have multiple title companies they have for different reasons. They have different specialties, different niches, and for what they have, their license in different states, and their networks are different. So that's part of it too, is offering up that, okay, well, can we do something with a small part of your business just to test us? And I always tell them, look, if you test us, I promise you, you will love the experience and you will love it. If you don't love it, feel free to tell me right to my face. I know it's not going to happen, but I know you're going to value the experience. And if we can't add value, that's fine. Like I said, I can't be everything to everyone, but that's some things I will typically offer besides letting them know, yes, I'll be following up and or I'll be staying in touch to potentially serve your team whenever you should need us.
That's fantastic. So what you're telling me is when they're closing the door, you're opening a window.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I love it. Hey, as we wrap this up, and this has just been very powerful, Brad, already, but I think something you do well, for instance, we're on this podcast together because you reached out to me post this event we did together with our mutual client, and you said, hey, let's meet. Let's get to know one another. We're in the same circles. I bump into you a lot in the same arenas. Let's meet. So I look at you as what I call a power player when it comes to the network. Somebody said your network is your net worth. And I think you're a master networker. So just as a bonus, why don't you describe this is kind of the golden microphone moment of the podcast as we end. Describe the power of networking and how collaboration and meeting with people and getting to know people on a deeper level, how that can help anyone listening in their sales.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So networking is so powerful for many reasons. For me, I view it as a huge ROT, return on time, because you can leverage a lot of people in one area in a very short amount of time, typically a couple hours. And if you do it right, you can touch base with a lot of different folks, both in your industry and not in your industry. and expand your network. And the network is so important, as you mentioned about net worth equals network, is because you don't know who you don't know. There are people one person removed that aren't in your industry, and some people will immediately write them off. But it's as long as you approach it the right way, is how can I help grow your business?
Yeah.
And thinking of adding value, you never know where that can lead. And both from the collaboration standpoint, like we're doing now, cross promotion is amazing. Again, you're in sales and I'm in sales, but your target is different than my target a little bit. But I can learn so much from you because you do this every day. And if I
Right.
just network with other signing service owners, or if I'm a title company, I just network with other business development managers, but I don't network with folks that are in other industries, there are things and strategies and tips and tricks that I'll never know because I'm limiting who I'm chatting with. And the beauty of that is we find something amazing that someone else in a similar industry is doing. Let's say it's auto sales or whatever it is. You can use it and be a first mover in your industry and you
Yeah.
can crush it. So
Yeah.
the networking is so powerful.
I love that. Innovation as a value add. Hey, I had an idea I picked up at a conference. I'd love to run by you. I love teeing up conversations with potential clients of mine simply by I have an idea I want to share. Innovation, powerful value add, connections. If you can be a connector for people, that is one of the best ways to be a go-giver, is just saying, I met somebody I think you should know. Can we discuss it? Because then you just, and I've talked to prospects on the phone, Brad, for 3 minutes. It's just like, hey, have an idea I want to run by you. But because they told me no, and I said, hey, I understand you're loyal over here, I'm going to stay in touch from time to time if I think of something based on our conversation that you would value. Is that okay? They say yes. Then a text message to them, say, hey, 3 minutes when you get a chance, have something run by you. And be true to that. Don't turn it into a spin sale, but be true to that. 3 minutes. Hey, I met Brad, superlative signings. Man, the guy's process is so buttoned down, like in the like what I'm hearing in the marketplace. I think it's somebody you should know. You probably are good, but you should probably just meet the guy because he's such a resource to agents I know. And would that be okay? Can I text? Can I introduce you both via text? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, that'd be great. Okay, man, take care. How's business? How's kids? Great, cool. There was never a are you looking yet? It's
Right.
never that like weird. It's weird. You don't go slimy sale on them. No, you just stay value adding, and the power of the network is your net worth. So, Brad, you do it so well. I want to thank you again for being willing to add your value to the Energy for Sales family and people listening across all sorts of industries. So thank you. And listen, if you want to know Brad, meet Brad, connect with Brad, especially if you're a title company, in the description of this podcast is his LinkedIn link as well as his contact information. So again, Brad, thanks for joining us today, man.
I appreciate you having me on, Tim. It's always a pleasure to share and give back. I love this. I get to do this on a monthly basis with notaries, and I get so much value out of it helping people. So if you got great value out of this content, throw a comment on the Energy for Sales podcast and let us know, because that just hits me right here whenever we help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.